I just signed the papers, 34 years old, a skyline view of the Rockies, and the kind of silence only the 39th floor buys. I did not tell my parents. I did not even tell my sister. I have spent more than 10 years of brutal work for this one place that is only mine. They could not touch this. I thought I was safe up here. I was wrong. My name is Kylie Pruitt. I am 34 years old, and I am a senior sales specialist for Northline BioCare. And while as of 10:30 a.m. this morning, I am the owner of Unit 39B at the Skyline Crest Residences. The pen felt heavy in my hand as I signed the last page of the closing documents, the notary sliding them across the polished mahogany table with a practiced, impersonal smile. An hour later, I stood alone in the apartment. The key, a solid piece of metal and plastic, felt cold and real in my palm. The silence was the first thing I noticed. It was not the thin, restless silence of the suburbs, pierced by lawnmowers and distant arguments. This was a thick, heavy, expensive silence, insulated by triple-paned glass and hundreds of feet of air. I walked across the wide plank white oak floors. The apartment was empty, a blank canvas of soft gray walls and recessed lighting. The main living area was defined by a single, breathtaking wall of floor-to-ceiling glass that framed the Rocky Mountains. The peaks were already capped with early snow, a jagged purple line against a perfect, piercing blue sky. This view was the reason I had stretched my budget until it screamed. I ran my hand along the waterfall edge of the kitchen island. It was a solid slab of white quartz, veined with subtle gray, cool to the touch. The appliances were German, integrated seamlessly into minimalist cabinetry that opened with a touch, not a handle. This was not a kitchen for someone who cooked. This was a kitchen for someone who ordered in, for someone whose time was worth more than a home-cooked meal. The master bedroom was a study in expensive simplicity. The only thing in it was the custom bed I'd had delivered and assembled last week, a low-profile frame with a mattress that cost more than my first car. The ensuite bathroom was a sanctuary of marble and heated floors. This was not a home. It was a statement. It was the physical, tangible result of more than 10 years of brutal, relentless work, 10 years of missed weddings, canceled vacations, and dinners eaten alone in airport terminals. 10 years of navigating the ego-driven world of surgeons and hospital administrators, of exceeding quotas by 200%, of being the top specialist in my region for 5 years running. And I had told no one. Not my parents, Denise and Rob Pruitt, not my sister, Kayla. I knew, with a certainty that settled in my stomach like cold lead. What would happen if I did? My family had a unique talent for turning my achievements into their assets. My victories were never just mine. They were family resources, opportunities to be divided and redistributed, usually in Kayla's direction. I leaned my forehead against the cool glass, looking down at the city of Denver. So far below it looked like a map. I remembered my college graduation dinner. I had finished summa cum laude. I'd given a speech. I had 3 job offers, one from Northline BioCare. That night, at a restaurant I had paid for with money from my work-study job, my mother Denise had barely touched her food. The entire conversation, the entire celebration, was hijacked. Why? Because Kayla, then 20, had just failed her driving test for the 2nd time. "She's just so sensitive, Kylie," my mother had said, her voice laced with that specific, weaponized worry she reserved for my sister. "She's taking it so hard." The examiner was rude to her. My father Rob had nodded, patting Kayla's hand. "It's a setback. Pumpkin, that's all. We'll get you more lessons." My academic honors, my future, dissolved into a background hum against the immediate, pressing drama of Kayla's inability to parallel park. It was always like this. When I'd received my first major promotion to a senior role, I had called home, giddy with the news. The bonus alone was enough to pay off the last of my student loans. My father's first words, after a brief, "That's great, honey," were, "Now that you're management, Does that mean you have enough pull to get your sister an internship? Anything, really. She's so creative. She just needs a chance to get her foot in the door. Kayla, 30 years old, living in my old childhood bedroom in my parents' house in the suburbs. She called herself a content creator and a brand-adjacent influencer. In reality, she had about 3,000 followers, and her content consisted of posting heavily filtered selfies with products my parents had clearly paid for. Her income was zero. Her expenses, from her designer handbags to her daily artisan lattes, were all subsidized by my parents, who spoke of her difficult journey as if she were a struggling artist instead of just struggling. That was why, on this bright Tuesday, the professional movers were the only ones who knew my new address. I had hired a premium, white glove service. I watched them, efficient and quiet, as they assembled my furniture, hung my art, and broke down the boxes. No family members were here, offering to help in exchange for pizza and beer. No one was here to critique my choice of sofa or mentally measure the second bedroom. The second bedroom, my home office, the place where I would close deals and manage my team. In my family's economy, it would be seen as the spare room. It would be seen as Kayla's future room. When the movers finally left, the silence rushed back in. But this time it was different. It was mine. I walked a slow circle through the apartment. I touched the walls. I heard the faint, clean echo of my own footsteps. "This is mine," I whispered, and the words hung in the air, real and solid. Only mine. My first night, I did not sleep. I sat on the sofa, watching the city lights glitter like a fallen constellation. My freedom felt sharp, almost painful, but my caution was sharper. The next day, I began to build my fortress. The building already had incredible security, a 24/7 concierge, key fob-only elevators, security patrols, but that was security against strangers. I needed security against family. I called a private locksmith, not the building's maintenance. I had him install a new, high-security smart lock on my door. It required a physical key, a 12-digit PIN code, and a fingerprint scan. I set the PIN to a random sequence of numbers from an old sales report, something no one could ever guess. Then, I installed my own camera. It was small, discreet, nestled in the corner of the ceiling in the tiny entrance hall. Aimed directly at the door, it recorded audio and video, stored it on a remote cloud server, and sent a real-time alert to my phone and my watch if it detected motion, even if the door was never opened. This level of paranoia felt excessive. It felt cold. It felt, for a fleeting, guilty moment, like something a bad daughter would do. But I knew my mother. I knew her ability to charm a concierge. I knew my father's blustering, "I'm her dad, of course she's expecting me" routine. I knew Kayla's talent for playing the victim, for acting like she'd been locked out and just needed help surprising her big sister. My new life was a separate ecosystem. The building's gym, on the 10th floor, was like a luxury hotel's. I went at 5:30 a.m., surrounded by people who were just as driven as I was. We nodded. We wiped down our machines, and we left. No one asked me about my weekend plans. No one asked me if I was dating. On the rooftop, there was a heated pool and a lounge with gas fire pits. I sat there one evening, a glass of wine in hand, and struck up a brief conversation with a woman who turned out to be a neurosurgeon. The man on the other side of the fire pit was a managing partner at a downtown law firm. We talked about the weather. We talked about a new restaurant. No one asked me where I came from, who my people were, or what I could do for them. For the first time in my life, I was just Kylie, not Kylie, the responsible one, not Kylie, Kayla's sister. The happiness was so pure it was terrifying. It was a high-wire act, and I was holding my breath, waiting for the wind to pick up. The guilt was a low, constant hum. I was hiding the single biggest achievement of my life from the people who were supposed to love me most. But I knew from 1,000 tiny cuts. Experience had taught me, in lessons written in blood and disappointment, that if I told them, this would no longer be my home. It would be a problem to be solved, a resource to be tapped, a space to be filled. My mother would call the second bedroom Kayla's new studio. My father would borrow my parking space for easier access to downtown. I held the secret close, like a fragile, precious thing. I thought I had built an impenetrable wall. I thought my new address, my new locks, my new life were safe. Kylie thought that hiding the apartment meant hiding her new life from the family. She didn't know. The first person to call that apartment by its name would be her mother, not her bank. My new apartment, my fortress of silence on the 39th floor, was not an impulse buy. It was an escape pod I had been building, piece by piece, for my entire life. To understand the locks on my door, you have to understand my family. In the Pruitt family, the narrative was set before Kayla and I could even walk. I was the independent one. She was the one who needs us. We were born 4 years apart, into the same middle-class suburban home, with the same 2 parents, but we were raised in different universes. I, Kylie, was the child who was so mature for her age. This was not a compliment. It was an abdication. It meant I was the one who was expected to understand why a family vacation had to be canceled, the one who did her own homework, the one who did not cry when she fell. Kayla was the child who was so sensitive. This was not a criticism. It was a shield. It meant she was the one whose tantrums were met with coups and negotiations. She was the one who could quit the soccer team mid-season because she did not like the color of the jerseys, and my parents would praise her for knowing her own mind. The divergence was cemented in our teens. At 16, I got a job at a local coffee shop. I wanted money for books my high school classes required, and I wanted a car that was not the family's decade-old minivan. I worked the 5:30 a.m. opening shift before school and did my homework on my break. The smell of burnt coffee and cleaning solution ground into my clothes. My parents called it building character. Kayla, at 16, was too fragile for a job. She needs to focus on her studies, my mother would say, even though Kayla's grades were a constant, rolling disaster. My parents felt sorry for her, a phrase that explained everything. It explained why she got a brand new car for her 17th birthday, a pick-me-up, after she failed her sophomore year finals. It explained why she never had to do chores, while I was responsible for mowing the lawn and helping my dad with the taxes. The dynamic was perfectly, painfully illustrated at our Sunday dinners, the mandatory weekly event I had come to dread. I remember one in particular. About 3 years ago, I had just flown in from a brutal quarter-end push in Chicago. I was exhausted, but I was also flying high. I just got the numbers for the quarter, I announced, passing the mashed potatoes. My territory was number 4 in the entire Western region, top 5. They're flying me to the national conference in Maui to speak on a panel. My father Rob nodded, his focus on carving the roast chicken. That's nice, Kylie. Good work. My mother Denise smiled vaguely, her eyes already drifting to the other end of the table. That's wonderful, dear. Oh, Kayla, show Kylie what that brand sent you. Isn't it just adorable? And just like that, the spotlight, which had barely grazed me, swiveled and locked onto my sister. Kayla, who had been texting under the table, brightened. Oh, right, she chirped, pulling a new shimmering pink lip gloss from her designer bag, a bag I knew for a fact my father had paid for. This new skincare brand, Glow-Teak, they sent me their entire spring line, for free. They want me to do an unboxing video. A whole box! Can you imagine? My mother gushed, as if Kayla had just cured a disease. They said her aesthetic was perfect for their demographic. The rest of the dinner, the next 45 minutes, was a detailed analysis of Kayla's career, her brand, the nuances of her Instagram filter choices. My top 5 regional finish was forgotten, a ripple in the water that had already disappeared. My father's favorite phrase, his go-to solution for every family conflict, was, "Family is for helping each other." It was a noble sentiment, but in our family, it was a one-way street, and all the traffic was directed at me. Helping always meant Kylie sacrificing something for Kayla. Kayla's academic career was a masterclass in failure to launch. She'd attended 3 different colleges, dropping out of each one. The first, a state university, was too big and impersonal. The second, a private liberal arts college, which I had helped pay for, stifled her creativity. The third, a local community college, was just boring. She had no degree, no qualifications. She'd held a few retail jobs. One at a boutique lasted 3 weeks, until she was asked to clean the stockroom. One at a makeup counter lasted 2 days, until a customer was rude to her. Now, at 30, she was a full-time dependent, living at home, her life funded entirely by my parents' dwindling retirement savings. And yet, her social media told a story of glamorous success. Daily posts from expensive cafes, new outfits, yoga retreats, and endless motivational quotes about living your truth and the hustle. It was a life built on a foundation of my parents' money and my silence. My silence and my active participation. I was the family ATM, the fixer. I will never forget the call I got 2 years ago. It was my mother. Her voice in that high, panicked whisper she used when things were really bad. Kayla had maxed out 3 credit cards. Not just maxed out. She was thousands of dollars over the limit. On cards my parents had co-signed. The collection agencies were calling. "They're threatening to take us to court. Kylie," my mother sobbed into the phone. "Your father is so stressed. His blood pressure is through the roof. It'll ruin his credit. We could lose the house." Could they lose the house? No. Was my father's credit at risk? Yes. Was it a complete and total drama? Absolutely. "Just this once, Kylie," my mother begged. "Just to get us out of this hole. She's learned her lesson. She really has." So I paid it, over $8,000, a significant chunk of my bonus. I wired the money, and the drama vanished. But she had not learned her lesson, and my help was not seen as a one-time bailout. It was seen as a new precedent. A few months later, when Kayla's car died, she had neglected to get an oil change for over a year. The expectation was laid bare. "Kylie, you're in a much better position than we are," my father told me, in his reasonable, boardroom voice. "You have such a good head on your shoulders. We're still paying off that credit card mess. You can carry her a little, can't you? Just to help her get back on her feet?" I co-signed the lease on her next car. I was trapped. If I said no, I was the cruel, selfish, rich sister who was letting her family suffer. If I said yes, I was just enabling the very behavior that was driving me insane. I always said yes. This was the exhaustion I lived with. It was a bone-deep weariness that had nothing to do with my demanding job. I started limiting my visits home. I used my work as a shield. "I'm so sorry. I have a conference call. I have to fly to Portland. It's last minute. We're in a launch phase. I'm working weekends." Every call, every visit, was a prelude to a new demand. Could I look at Kayla's business plan? A 1-page Word document with typos? Could I lend her money for a new laptop so she could edit her videos? Could my parents borrow a few thousand? Just until their tax refund came in? I became a master of corporate vagueness. I stopped talking about my successes, my salary, my bonuses, my stock options. They all went into a black box. When they asked how work was, I said, "Busy. You know how it is. Same old, same old." I was a financial ghost. I was hiding my own life from my family to protect it, to keep it from being planned by them, redistributed to cover for Kayla's latest crisis. I was living a double life, the competent, high-achieving Kylie at work, and the guarded, secretive Kylie with her family. Deep down, buried under years of resentment, there was still a tiny, stupid part of me that wanted their approval, a part of me that wanted my dad to say, "I'm proud of you, Kylie," without following it up with a request. A part of me that wanted my mom to look at me, just me, and see my success as my own, not as a resource for her other, more sensitive child. That hope was fading. It had been eroded by 1,000 compromises, 1,000 paper cuts, 1,000 moments of being overlooked. And so, when I bought the Skyline Crest apartment, telling them was not an option. It was an act of self-preservation. I built my walls high. But I made one mistake. A week after I moved in, I was sitting in my home office, working on a presentation. The sun was setting, and it hit the mountains in that perfect way, turning the snow pink and gold. It was so beautiful it almost hurt. Without thinking, I snapped a picture with my phone. Just the view. No part of the apartment, no desk, no reflection, just the sky and the mountains. I was part of an internal, company-only social network for Northline BioCare. It was a place where colleagues shared wins, industry news, and occasionally, a personal moment. I posted the picture. The caption was simple. The new home office view isn't bad. Grateful. I thought nothing of it. It was a closed system. My family was not on it. My colleagues were professionals, scattered across the country. It was safe. But they always say it is a small world. What they do not tell you is that the world is smallest when you have a secret. I had no idea that my small professional world and my toxic family world were about to collide. I had no idea that a single, harmless connection, a friend of a colleague, would be the thread that would unravel my entire, carefully constructed, secret life. The first month in the apartment was a revelation. It was the first time in my adult life I truly understood what silence meant. My days quickly fell into a rhythm that was entirely my own, dictated by my own needs, not by the gravitational pull of my family's constant, low-grade chaos. My alarm went off at 5 a.m. I would be in the 10th floor gym by 5:15, running on a treadmill that faced a wall of glass, watching the black sky over the mountains slowly bleed into a deep, bruised purple, then into a fiery orange. The other people in the gym were shadows of quiet discipline. The neurosurgeon I'd met, a tech CEO I recognized from a magazine, a woman who argued cases at the state courthouse. We were a silent tribe of the overdriven. We did our work, we wiped down our machines, and we disappeared back into our separate, expensive elevators. By 7, I would be back in my apartment, showered, and standing in my kitchen with a cup of black coffee. I would watch the city below wake up, the flow of headlights turning into a crawl of daytime traffic, all of it completely silent from my vantage point. Then, I would walk into my home office, my second bedroom, my sanctuary, and close the door. My work at Northline BioCare, which had always been demanding, went into overdrive. We were in the final push for a major product launch, a new class of cardiovascular drug that was poised to either be a blockbuster or a billion-dollar write-off. My life became a blur of data analysis, training modules for my junior sales reps, and high-level strategy calls with physicians and hospital administrators. The launch was a gift. It was the perfect, unimpeachable excuse. My phone would buzz with the family group text. "Sunday dinner?" my mother would write. I could, for the first time, reply with perfect honesty. "Can't. I'm buried with the launch. On back-to-back calls all weekend preparing the sales team. It's a huge rollout." "What about just dessert?" my father would text, always the one trying to find the compromise that would get me in the room. "Sorry, Dad. Have to be on a web conference with the East Coast team at 8. Time zones are killing me. Rain check." The like button on my texts would be hit by both of them. Kayla, naturally, never responded. This new, professional distance felt incredible. It was a shield I had always needed but never had. My long hours were real. My stress was real. But now they were serving a dual purpose, protecting my career and protecting my sanity. I worked through the evenings. My home office, with its ergonomic chair and its 3 monitors, was my cockpit. I would sit there until 9 or 10 at night. The city lights of Denver glittering below me like a carpet of diamonds. The view was my constant companion, a reminder of what I had earned. I felt powerful. I felt in control. I had not seen my family in person in almost 5 weeks. It was, without a doubt, the most peaceful 5 weeks of my life. Then the text message came. It was a Tuesday night. I had just finished a brutal 2-hour call with our legal compliance department. My brain was fried. I was in the kitchen, pouring a glass of wine, when my phone lit up on the quartz countertop. It was a solo text from my mother. "Kylie, your father and I would like to have lunch with you and Kayla this Sunday. Can you make time? There is something very important we need to discuss as a family." My blood went cold. Not a chill, but a sudden, icy drop in temperature that started in my chest and radiated out to my fingertips, making the wine glass feel slick in my hand. It was the language. It was corporate. It was specific. It was not, "Let's get together." It was, "We need to discuss." And the nuclear weapon of my family's vocabulary, "very important." In the Pruitt dynamic, very important never meant good news. It never meant, "We won the lottery," or "Dad's retiring and we're going to Hawaii." It meant a problem had reached a critical mass. It meant a family meeting was being called, which was our code for a Kylie responsibility assignment session. This was how the $8,000 credit card bailout had begun. This was how the co-signature on Kayla's car lease had begun, with a very important discussion. My first instinct was to lie, to type back, "So sorry. The launch team is flying in. I'll be in meetings all weekend at a hotel. Absolutely no way." I held my thumb over the keyboard, but something stopped me. The formality of the text, the coldness of it, it felt different. It felt calculated. My usual excuses, the ones that had worked so well for the past month, suddenly felt flimsy. I had a sickening premonition that if I dodged this, the follow-up would be worse. They would show up at my old apartment, find it empty, and the situation would escalate in a way I could not control. Or worse, they would somehow find me. I decided it was better to face the dragon than to let it burn down my village. I would go, but I would go on my own terms. I would be a fortress. I typed back, "Sunday works for me. What time?" My mother's reply was instant, almost as if she had been waiting. "Wonderful. 12:30, the Gilded Spruce on Larimer. I made a reservation." I stared at the name, the Gilded Spruce. I had to look it up. It was new, expensive, and known for its austere, minimalist decor and its private dining rooms. It was a place where you took a client to close a 7-figure deal. We had never, not once, eaten at a place like that. Our family restaurants were loud, casual places with sticky menus and endless breadsticks. This was not a lunch. This was a summit. I spent the next 4 days preparing myself, not for a meal, but for a negotiation. I went over my mental scripts. I practiced my no. I would not be emotional. I would not raise my voice. I would be calm, polite, and immovable. I would listen. I would state my position, and I would leave. I would not offer money. I would not offer time. I would not offer solutions. I was a rock. I was an island. On Sunday, I dressed for battle, not in armor, but in the opposite. I wore a pair of dark, wide-leg trousers, a simple silk blouse in a cream color, and a sharp, tailored blazer. My hair was pulled back in a sleek, professional bun. I wore my Northline BioCare big client outfit. It was designed to project effortless authority and zero vulnerability. I drove downtown, my stomach a tight knot of anxiety. I valeted my car, walked into the hushed, cavernous lobby of the Gilded Spruce. The hostess, a young woman who looked like a model, smiled warmly. "I'm here for a reservation. Pruitt, for 4. Yes," she said, her eyes glancing at a screen. "Your party is already in our private dining annex. Right this way." Private dining annex. She led me through the main dining room, a vast space of neutral tones, blonde wood, and enormous windows, to a series of semi-private rooms sectioned off by heavy glass panels. In the last one, I saw them. They were sitting at a round table, already sipping ice water with lemon, and they were all dressed up. My mother, Denise, was wearing her special event perfume, a scent I associated with weddings and funerals. It was a heavy floral smell that was already giving me a headache. She had on a new dress, a structured sheath in a severe navy blue, My father, Rob, was wearing a collared shirt that had been ironed, his gray hair combed and parted neatly, his jaw clean-shaven. And Kayla, she was not in her usual uniform of high-end athleisure. She was wearing a black cashmere turtleneck sweater, her hair perfectly flat-ironed, her makeup flawless. She looked serious. She looked rehearsed. The entire table looked like a panel of interviewers, a small, strange family tribunal. "There she is," my mother announced, her smile a bright, brittle thing that did not touch her eyes. "Kylie, honey, you look wonderful, so professional." "Hi, Mom, Dad, Kayla." I sat down, placing my small, structured purse on the floor beside me. The silence was immediately filled by an overly attentive waiter appearing to discuss the specials. We ordered. I chose a simple salad. I knew I would not be able to eat. And then, the performance began. For the next hour, we engaged in the most aggressively superficial conversation of my entire life. We talked about the weather. We talked about a neighbor from our old street who was selling their house. My father discussed, in excruciating detail, his last golf game. "The greens were just too fast. Kylie, I couldn't get my putter to cooperate." "Kayla, how's your content creation going?" I asked, just to break the monotony. "Oh, it's amazing," she said, her voice unusually bright. "I'm in talks with a new hydration brand. It's all about synergy. It's a lot of work, but I'm really building my platform." My mother beamed at her. "She's just so dedicated. It's wonderful to see." Not once did anyone mention the very important reason we were here. With every passing minute, the tension in my shoulders ratcheted up another notch. This was a classic tactic. Wear me down with small talk. Make me so desperate for the confrontation to just happen that I would be off balance when it finally did. The waiter cleared our main courses. He offered dessert menus. "Oh, yes," my mother said, smiling brightly at him. "We'll need a few minutes." He left. The four of us sat in the sterile, quiet room. The sound of my own breathing felt deafening. My mother took a delicate sip of her ice water. She blotted her lipstick on a linen napkin. She placed the napkin on the table. Then, she picked up her dessert fork, not to use it, but to tap it lightly, once, against the rim of her water glass, creating a tiny, clear ding that cut through the silence. She folded her hands on the table, leaned forward, and looked directly at me. Her expression was not one of motherly concern. It was focused, sharp, and predatory. "Kylie," she said, her voice low and even, "your father and I know about your apartment." The air in the glass-walled room, which had been merely quiet, was now so dense and heavy it felt like I was underwater. The clatter of a fork from the main dining room, far away, sounded like a gunshot. My mother's eyes were locked on mine. She had just deployed her nuclear weapon, and she was waiting, with a terrifying predator's patience, for the fallout. I kept my hands perfectly still in my lap. I kept my breathing even. I was a senior sales specialist. I had sat across from surgeons who held the power of million-dollar contracts, men who tried to intimidate me as a sport. I knew how to handle a hostile negotiation. "My apartment?" I said, my voice deliberately light, almost confused. "Mom, I'm not sure what you mean. My lease on the old place is fine. I just renewed it." It was a weak, pathetic lie, a reflexive little tap dance, and she swatted it out of the air. My mother, Denise, laughed. It was not a nice sound. It was short and sharp, like a bark. "Oh, Kylie, do not do that. Do not be disingenuous. It's unbecoming. We are not talking about your little rental. We are talking about the apartment, the penthouse, at the Skyline Crest Residences." She said the name. She said the name of my building. A cold, sharp shock went straight through my sternum. This was not a guess. This was not a suspicion. This was intel. I did not let my face change. I looked at her, held her gaze, and asked the only question that mattered. "How did you find that out?" Her smile was one of pure, unadulterated triumph. She had information. She had leverage. She was going to enjoy this, draw it out, show me how foolish my attempts at secrecy had been. You know, she began, leaning back as if settling in for a long, delicious story. The world is just so small. I was at the supermarket, King Soopers, just picking up some chicken, and I ran into Barbara Collins. I had no idea who that was. You remember the Collins family, don't you? From our old street? They lived 3 blocks over. Her son, Ryan, was a few years ahead of you. A difficult child, always in some sort of trouble. I said nothing. Well, Barbara and I were just catching up, right there by the frozen foods, and she was telling me all about Ryan. He's apparently turned his life around. He's in real estate now, doing very, very well for himself, she says, bragging, really. My mother paused, taking a sip of water. She was the star of this play, and she would not be rushed. And she says, Denise, you'll never guess. Ryan just closed the biggest deal of his career. And I said, oh? And she said, yes, a magnificent penthouse, top of the line, at that new building downtown, the Skyline Crest. And then, Kylie. Her eyes narrowed, the smile becoming a pinpoint. She said the most interesting thing. My hands were now fists under the table. She said, and the buyer? You might even know her. A single woman, very successful, a Kylie Pruitt. She works in pharmaceuticals. Now, imagine that. Is that your Kylie? She asked me. The trap had sprung. It all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. That stupid picture of the mountains, my post on the Northline BioCare internal network. I didn't know Ryan Collins. He must have been the seller's agent, or maybe just saw the closing documents in his office and wanted to brag. He bragged to his mother, who bragged to my mother. A stupid, mundane chain of suburban gossip had just blown my fortress to pieces. Before I could formulate a single word of response, my father, Rob, leaned in. He was taking the role of the disappointed patriarch. A penthouse, Kylie, he said, his voice laced with a gentle, wounding reproach. A penthouse, and you didn't think to tell your mother? Or me? You just buy a place like that, move all your things, and don't breathe a word to your family. Is that what we taught you? Is that proper? Proper was his word. It meant falling in line. It meant doing what we expect. I pulled my hands from my lap and placed them on the table. I looked at my father. I am 34 years old. Dad, I said, my voice as neutral and steady as I could make it. I did not think I needed to ask for permission to buy a home. It's my money. I've worked for it. I just wanted privacy. The word hung in the air, tasting like a curse. Privacy? My mother snapped, the pretense of her gossip girl story evaporating. Privacy from who? Kylie? From your family? What on earth are you hiding? We're the only people in the world who have always supported you. The lie was so audacious, so complete, that I almost laughed. Supported me? I, who had paid off Kayla's debt. I, who had funded my own life since I was 16. But I said nothing. I knew this was not a trial about facts. It was an execution. My mother saw my composure, and it clearly infuriated her. She visibly shifted gears. The anger receded, and the mask of the loving, self-sacrificing matriarch slid into place. It was a terrifyingly fast transition. Look, she said, her voice softening, her hand reaching across the table to pat my arm. I did not pull away. We are thrilled for you, aren't we, Rob? Of course, my father boomed, nodding. So successful, my girl. We're proud. So proud. I just waited. This was the wind-up. This was the butt. But Kylie, my mother continued, her hand still on my arm, when you are this successful, she gestured vaguely, as if to encompass my new, imaginary wealth. It comes with a certain responsibility, a responsibility to people who haven't been as lucky. You have to think bigger than just yourself. You have to think about the family. You have to think about your sister. And there it was, the target, the bullseye, the entire reason for this restaurant. this private room, this theatrical performance. Kayla. I looked at my sister. She had not moved. She was still scrolling through her phone. Her thumb flicking up, up, up. She was utterly disengaged, as if this were a boring conference call she was forced to be on. She was just waiting for the resolution. I turned back to my mother. Think about her in what way? I asked. My voice was ice. I would not let them dance around this. I would make them say the words. My father cleared his throat. He took over, shifting into his boardroom voice. This was his role, the voice of reason, the man who laid out the logical terms of my surrender. Your sister is at a critical juncture in her career. Kylie, he began. Her career? I asked, unable to help myself. Yes, he said, frowning at the interruption. This content creator field is brutal, very competitive. She has the talent, obviously. She just needs the right infrastructure. She's in a very difficult early stage. I glanced at Kayla's cashmere sweater. A very difficult stage, indeed. Your mother and I have been discussing this for weeks, Rob continued. The real problem, the thing holding her back, is her environment. She needs to be in the city. She needs to be downtown, where the action is, where the other creators are. She needs to mature, to be on her own. The irony was so thick, I thought I would suffocate on it. They were going to make Kayla independent by strapping her to my back. But the rent, Kylie, he said, shaking his head gravely. It's just astronomical. We've looked. It's impossible for a young person just starting out. She can't possibly build her brand if she's worried sick about paying rent every month. My mother saw her opening and slid in for the kill. And then, she said, her voice bright with the brilliance of her own idea, we heard about your new place, from Barbara Collins, and it just clicked. It was a sign. It is the perfect solution. I just stared at her. I did not speak. You have that big new apartment, a penthouse. It must have at least 2 bedrooms, right? You have that extra room. It's my home office, I said, my voice a flat line. My mother waved my words away with a flick of her wrist, as if I'd said something trivial, like, it's painted beige. A home office? A bedroom? What's the difference? It's a room. It's space. And so, the plan is wonderfully simple. Kayla will move in with you. She said it, just like that. A statement of fact, a decision that had been made, ratified by the Pruitt family board, with me as the only unnotified member. It's just temporary. Of course, she added quickly, a salesperson rushing to the close. Just to let her get on her feet, get her channel off the ground. What do you think, Rob? 6 months? Maybe a year? 12 months, tops, my father agreed, nodding. 12 months, my mother repeated, smiling at me. She won't have to worry about rent, or utilities, or any of that. She can just focus 100% on her work, and you'll be right there. You can support her, help her with groceries, the little things, maybe a small allowance, just to help her with her equipment and things, to help her build her channel. It is the perfect solution, for everyone. The silence that followed was different. It was the silence of expectation. They were all looking at me, my father, with a look of, see how reasonable this is. My mother, with a bright, brittle smile of, this is non-negotiable. They expected me to nod. They expected me to capitulate. They expected me to say, of course, that makes perfect sense. The no I had practiced in my head felt small and inadequate. I took a slow breath. I focused on the sound of the air conditioning in the room. That is not a spare room, I said, and the voice that came out of me was not the one they knew. It was not the voice of Kylie, the good daughter. It was the voice of Ms. Pruitt from Northline BioCare, the one who shut down bad deals. It is my dedicated home office. I work 10 hours a day in that room. It is vital for my job, and I am not having anyone move in. The smiles froze. My mother's face tightened, the skin around her mouth going white. My father's reasonable expression faltered, replaced by confusion, then annoyance. And then, For the first time, my sister spoke. Kayla's head lifted from her phone. She looked at me, not with anger, but with genuine, profound annoyance, as if I were a waiter who had just told her they were out of her favorite dish. "Oh my God, Kylie," she sighed, a put-upon, exasperated sound. "Stop being so dramatic. We were literally joking about this in the car on the way here. Mom was like, I bet Kylie will try to be difficult about it, and I said she wouldn't." She actually rolled her eyes. "You're Kylie," she said, as if explaining gravity to a child. "You always take the hit for the family. Everyone knows that. You'll complain about it for a week, and then you'll do it. Just do not be weird about it. You always take the hit. Not you're so generous, not you're so helpful, but you take the hit." She said it as if it were my designated role, my function, the family's personal shock absorber, and she was bored by my attempts to deviate from the script. Something in my chest, a tiny, cold, exhausted thing that had been clenched for 34 years, did not just break, it shattered. I looked at Kayla, in her cashmere sweater, her eyes already drifting back to the screen of her phone. I looked at my father, who was composing his next disappointment speech. I looked at my mother, who was preparing her next volley of guilt. "This time is different," I said. I picked up my linen napkin from my lap and placed it, neatly folded, on the table next to my untouched salad. "The answer is no." The word no hung in the private dining room. It was not a word they were used to hearing from me. It was a complete sentence, an absolute, a wall I had just erected in the middle of their perfect, logical plan. The silence that followed was not the quiet, polite hush of before. It was a ringing, shocked, offensive silence. It was as if I had thrown the entire water pitcher onto the polished floor. I could see the physical impact on their faces. My father's mouth, which had been forming its next reasonable point, hung open slightly. Kayla's eyes, which had been drifting back to her phone, were now wide and fixed on me. My mother, Denise, was the first to recover. Her face, which had been frozen in that bright, expectant smile, collapsed. The smile vanished and was replaced by a look of such profound, venomous offense. It was startling. Her eyes went hard. "Selfish," she hissed. The word was low, but it cut through the room like a scalpel. "Kylie, you are being unbelievably, profoundly selfish." "Denise," my father started, raising a hand, but she was already in motion, her fury building. "No, Rob, I will not be quiet. We are sitting here, offering a perfect, logical solution for this family, and you are being selfish. You have all this," she jested, "this success, this penthouse, and you cannot find it in your heart to help your own sister, your own flesh and blood?" My father, Rob, shook his head, his expression shifting from confusion to his familiar mask of deep, paternal disappointment. This was his favorite role, the wounded, reasonable patriarch. "Kylie, Kylie," he sighed, steepling his fingers. "This is not about being selfish. This is about what is right. You know our family motto, family helps family. That is all we have ever done. That is all we are asking. Your sister is struggling, and you are not. Are you really going to let your own sister just, what, struggle out there, all alone?" Struggle. The word echoed in my head. I thought about struggle. I thought about me, at 18, working the opening shift at the coffee shop at 5 a.m., my hands raw from hot water and cleaning solution, just to pay for my own textbooks so I would not have to ask them. I thought about me, at 20, taking on a second job tutoring freshmen, while Kayla, also 20, was given a new car after dropping out of her first college because it was too stressful. I thought about me, at 25, driving a 10-year-old Civic through the rural, desolate territories of Wyoming and Montana for Northline, sleeping in cheap motels, eating gas station dinners, trying to build my sales territory from scratch, alone, with no safety net. I thought about the $8,000. The $8,000 I had wired, no questions asked, to erase Kayla's credit card struggle, only to have them ask me to co-sign a car lease for her 6 months later. And I thought of them, sitting here, in a restaurant I would undoubtedly end up paying for, in clothes I had probably inadvertently financed, with their plan that involved my home, my money, and my life. I pulled my gaze from the middle distance and looked at my father. "Dad," I said, and my voice was so calm it frightened me. "I am not refusing because I hate Kayla. I am refusing because for 34 years, family helps family has only ever meant Kylie helps everyone." "That is not true," my mother snapped, her voice rising. "Is it not?" I asked, turning to her. "The help only flows one way. Mom, it flows from me, to you, to Kayla. When have you ever, once, called a family meeting to figure out how to help me? To ease my burden? To ask what I needed?" My mother's face went white, then a deep, blotchy red. She saw the argument was shifting from her plan to her actions, and she immediately went for the ultimate weapon, the one she had been honing my entire life: guilt. "How dare you?" she said, her voice trembling with manufactured rage. "After everything we have done for you, we raised you, we fed you, we gave you a home, we paid for your life. And this is how you repay us? This is your gratitude? By abandoning your sister? By turning your back on the people who gave you everything?" "You did not give me everything," I said, and my voice, which had been so quiet, was suddenly shaking, not with fear, but with a sudden, white-hot rage that I had been swallowing for my entire life. "You gave Kayla everything. You paid for her 3 failed attempts at college. You paid for her cars. You are paying for her life, right now, at 30 years old. What you gave me was a set of expectations." "We raised you both the same," my father insisted, his voice booming, defensive. No, you did not," I said, and my voice finally rose, cracking through the polite hush of the room. "You did not. You raised us in 2 completely different systems. With me, every success was an obligation. It was my duty. It was just Kylie being Kylie. When I graduated with honors, it was expected. When I got my first job, it was expected. When I paid my own rent, it was expected. And with Kayla?" I turned to my sister, who was finally looking at me, her eyes wide with something, shock, or maybe just annoyance that the drama was getting loud. With Kayla, every failure was a tragedy. It was poor Kayla. She is so sensitive. We have to understand her journey. She is just finding herself. With me, it was always duty. With her, it was always sympathy. You did not raise us the same. You raised me to be your mule, and you raised her to be your pet." The pet finally spoke. Kayla's face, which had been passive, contorted into a sneer. "Oh my God," she spat, her voice dripping with the familiar bored disdain. "Will you just listen to yourself? Poor me. I am so successful. My life is so hard. You always do this. You always act like you are some kind of martyr. You have a penthouse, Kylie. You have a fancy job. You have all this money, and you are still trying to act like the victim. It is pathetic." I looked at her. I really looked at her. At her perfect makeup, her expensive cashmere sweater, her entire life, all of it funded by other people's labor. "I am not a victim. Kayla," I said. My voice went cold again, the rage receding, leaving behind something hard and clear, like glass. "I am the one who pays the price for my choices. When I fail, I pay. When I succeed, I pay. I paid for my education. I paid for my car. I paid for my apartment. The consequences of my life are mine." I pointed a finger, just slightly, across the table. "You are the one who has never had to pay for a single consequence in your entire life. Your failures, your debts, your bad decisions. Mom and Dad pay, or I pay. You are a 30-year-old woman living on a free pass. We are not the same. Those are 2 completely different things." That was it. There was nothing left to say. The last 34 years had just been compressed and detonated at this table. I reached into my purse, I pulled out my wallet, I took out a $100 bill and a 50, my salad and iced tea. I placed the bills neatly on the table, on top of my still-folded linen napkin. "I am done," I said. I pushed my chair back. The sound of its legs scraping on the polished wood floor was obscenely loud. I stood up, picking up my purse. "Kayla is 30 years old," I said, my voice clear and final, addressing the whole table, but also, for the first time, addressing the universe. "She does not need me. She does not need a babysitter or a benefactor. She needs to get a job. She needs her own responsibility." "Kylie, you sit down," my father commanded, his voice turning hard. "Kylie, you will not do this," my mother said, her face pale. I turned and started walking toward the glass door of the private room. "Kylie Pruitt!" my mother screamed. Her voice was no longer a hiss. It was a shriek. It was the raw, primal sound of someone losing control, of having their authority defied for the first time. It was a sound that made the back of my neck prickle. If you walk out of this restaurant, if you walk out that door right now, you are not a part of this family anymore. Do you hear me? You are done. You are no longer my daughter. It was the threat I had been hearing, in one form or another, my entire life. If you do not do this, we will not love you. If you do not comply, you will be abandoned. I stopped for 1 second, my hand on the glass. The entire main dining room was staring at our annex. I could feel their eyes. I thought, for a fleeting, painful moment, of turning back, of saying, "I am sorry," of sitting down, of letting the wave wash over me. Just one more time. But Kayla's voice echoed in my head. "You always take the hit." I pushed the door open. I walked through the silent, staring restaurant. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard, I thought it might break through. My back was straight. My footsteps were even. I did not run. And I did not look back. As I stepped out of the restaurant and onto the bright, noisy street, the sunlight hitting my face, a single, clear, terrifying thought solidified in my mind. If I had softened, just then, even for one more second, they would never, ever have stopped. I did not go to the valet. I had thrown the $150 on the table, but I still had the valet ticket in my pocket. Instead, I walked for 10, maybe 12 blocks, my professional, authoritative heels clacking on the pavement. I was a block of pure, unadulterated adrenaline. I was not crying. I was not angry. I was just vibrating. I finally hailed a cab. The driver giving me a strange look. I gave him the address of my old apartment building, a reflexive, stupid mistake. "No," I said, my voice hoarse. "Change that. Skyline Crest Residences, downtown." The ride to the building felt like a fever dream. I paid in cash, walked into the lobby, and nodded to the concierge, who smiled politely. I was sure my face was a mask of absolute horror, but he said nothing. The elevator ride, 39 floors of silent, smooth ascent, felt like an eternity. I got inside my apartment, Unit 39B, and leaned against the door, sliding the deadbolt across. The thunk of the bolt was the loudest sound in the world. I stood there for a long time, just breathing, the view of the Rockies, now in the full, flat light of the afternoon, was magnificent. It offered no comfort at all. I felt like I had just cut the rope to my own anchor. I was adrift, but I was also, for the first time, free. But that freedom felt like a raw, open wound. It was not a celebration, it was a severing. I had not just walked out of a restaurant. I had just walked out of my entire childhood, my entire identity as the good daughter, and I had left it burning on the table next to a half-eaten salad. The silence of the apartment, once my greatest comfort, now felt accusatory. It was too quiet. The first volley arrived at exactly 7:45 p.m. My phone, which had been ominously silent, lit up. It was my mother. "I cannot believe what you did today. I am physically sick to my stomach. To humiliate your father and me like that. in public, to say those cruel, untrue things about your sister. After everything we have done, this is the thanks we get. You have broken my heart. I do not even know who you are anymore. You are not the daughter I raised." It was a masterpiece of her form. It had everything. The requisite claims of physical illness, the accusation of public humiliation, not her own, of course, but mine, the complete denial of my points, reframing them as cruel, untrue things, and the grand finale, the "you are not my daughter," emotional excommunication, the same threat she had screamed in the restaurant. I read it twice, and I felt nothing, just a deep, cold exhaustion. I did not reply. An hour later, the second wave hit. This time, it was an email from my father. The subject line was simply, "A path forward." "Kylie," it began, in his reasonable businessman voice. "Today was unfortunate. A lot of things were said in anger that I am sure no one truly meant. Your mother is very, very upset. You were incredibly disrespectful to her. But I am not writing about that. I am writing about your core objection, which I feel is based on emotion rather than logic. You feel that you are carrying your sister. I want you to reframe that. A family is a unit. The stronger members have an obligation to support the others until the whole unit is strong. It is not carrying, it is investing." I have attached a few articles for you to read. One is from a financial journal about how interfamily support is the #1 driver of generational success. Another is a very touching story about two sisters who pooled their resources so one could buy a home, and the other could launch her dream. We all respect your success. We are proud of it, but that success does not belong just to you. Kylie, it belongs to the family that made it possible. Think about that. We are a team, and you just told the team you are taking your ball and going home. I expect you to call your mother and apologize, and then we can sit down and implement the plan for Kayla in a calm, rational way. This is not a negotiation. It is a family matter. Dad. I clicked on one of the links. Why sibling support is the new normal for millennial homebuyers. I closed the laptop. My father had not heard a single word I said. He had heard no, and his entire response was to repackage his yes with a different, more condescending bow. He was not arguing with me. He was educating me. I did not reply to his email. Then came Kayla. Her attack was, as always, oblique. Around 11 p.m., I idly opened Instagram. She had posted a new story. It was a black and white boomerang of a single teardrop hitting her knee. The text, in a delicate, sad script, was overlaid. Nothing hurts more than being abandoned by the one person you always looked up to, just shattered. I tapped through to her main feed. A new post, also in black and white. A picture of her looking wistfully out her childhood bedroom window. The caption, "Feeling so lost right now. Sometimes the people who are supposed to be your biggest protectors are the ones who hurt you the most. Just trying to find my light. Send good vibes." The comments were already flooding in. "Oh no, sweetie. What happened? Sending you so much love. You are a queen. Stay strong. Do not let the haters get you down." She was a victim. She had been wounded, and I, without even being named, was the hater. I was the abuser. She was monetizing my no into sympathy clicks, turning our private family explosion into her new tragic narrative. I stared at the post, at the performance of it all, and I felt a sudden, sharp, definitive click in my brain. I went to my settings. I muted the family group chat. I muted my mother's contact. I muted my father's. I muted Kayla's. Then I went into my phone's Do Not Disturb settings and scheduled it to run from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. every single day. I would not be ambushed in my own home, on my own phone, ever again. I read all their messages, and I did not answer a single one. For 2 weeks, the war continued without my participation. The messages, which I would check once a day, like looking into a cage of angry snakes, followed a predictable escalating pattern. First came the guilt. Your mother has not come out of her room. Kayla is not eating. Your father is so disappointed. His blood pressure is high. When guilt failed to get a response, it turned to anger. Who do you think you are? This selfishness is a sickness. You are destroying this family. I hope you are happy. When anger failed, it turned to pleading. Kylie, please, just call me. Let's just talk. I miss you. This is tearing me apart. We can fix this. This was my mother, at 3 a.m. I held the line. The silence was my only weapon. My non-response was the only no they could not argue with, reframe, or guilt trip. And then, as I knew it must, the strategy changed. They had exhausted verbal and emotional warfare. The next step was a physical breach of the border. The threats began. If you will not talk to us, we will come to you. We are going to settle this, face to face. This is not over. We are your family. You cannot just lock us out. I read them. I saved them. I felt a cold knot of dread. But also, validation. I had been right to install the extra locks. I had been right to be paranoid. My family was not a group of people who respected boundaries. They were a group of people who looked for weaknesses in them. Then, this morning, the final declaration. It came at 9 a.m. I was in my home office, on a video call with my regional team, when my watch buzzed with the text. I glanced at it. It was from my mother. We are done with this silent treatment. It is childish and cruel. We have given you 2 weeks to come to your senses. Your father and sister and I are coming to your apartment tomorrow. 10 a.m. We will be there. You will be there. We are going to resolve this as a family. The call I was on droned on. Someone was talking about second quarter projections. I was staring at the words on my watch. We will be there. You will be there. It was not a request. It was not a question. It was a summons. It was a declaration of intent. They were not asking to be invited into my home. They were informing me of their arrival. They were treating my apartment, my 39th floor fortress, as a recalcitrant province that was about to be brought back under imperial rule. Something in me, the last thread of hope that they would just stop. It did not just break. It atomized. It turned to dust. I finished my work call. Great work, team. Talk next week. I logged off. I walked out of my office and into the kitchen. I poured a glass of water. I stood at my counter, looking out at the mountains, and I read the text message again on my phone. We will resolve this as a... I sat down at my quartz counter, my hands shaking just slightly. I had been in a state of high alert, fight or flight for 2 solid weeks, and now the invasion was scheduled. I opened my laptop. My mind was suddenly terrifyingly clear. All the emotions, the guilt, the anger, the profound, aching sadness, receded. They were replaced by a cold, hard, logistical clarity. I saw 2 paths in front of me. Path 1. I could text back. I could get into a screaming match over iMessage. I could cry. I could beg them not to come. I could be there at 10 a.m. tomorrow, and we could have the fight from the restaurant all over again. But this time in my lobby, or in my hallway, or God forbid, inside my home, I could let them in, and we could scream and cry until I was exhausted, until I was worn down, until I gave in, just to make it stop. I could take the hit, as Kayla had so perfectly put it. Or path 2. I could accept that the people who were coming here tomorrow were not family in the supportive, loving sense of the word. They were, in this specific context, a threat. They were a group of people who had explicitly stated their intent to come to my private property, against my will, to force me to give them access and assets. This was no longer a family dispute. It was a security problem. It was a property and assets problem. And you do not solve a security problem with emotions. You solve it with lawyers and locks. My fingers, no longer shaking, moved to the trackpad. I opened a new browser tab. My throat was dry. This was the moment. This was the final door. Walking out of the restaurant was one thing. This was something else. This was inviting the law into the space where love was supposed to be. I typed the words into the search bar. Private home security, Denver high-rise legal trespass options. I pressed enter. For the first time in my life, I was not preparing for an argument. I was preparing for a defense. I did not go to sleep. I went to work. At 8 a.m., I was in the lobby, not at the concierge desk, but at the small, discreet door marked Building Security. I asked for the manager. A man named Marcus came out, coffee mug in hand. He was in his 50s, with an ex-military posture and the calm, profoundly bored eyes of a man who had seen every possible variation of high-rise foolishness. "Ms. Pruitt," he said, shaking my hand. His grip was firm. "Everything okay on the 39th floor?" "I need to discuss a private security matter," I said. He led me into his small, immaculate office. The walls were lined with monitors showing various angles of the lobby, the garage, and the elevators. I did not get emotional. I did not say, "My mother is being mean," or "My sister is entitled." I was Kylie Pruitt from Northline BioCare, presenting a problem and a required solution. "I have estranged family members," I began, my voice even. "They are operating under the false assumption that their relationship to me grants them access to my property. I have refused them entry. They have responded by threatening, in writing, to appear at my unit tomorrow at 10 a.m. to force the issue. I need to ensure that when I say no, the building's infrastructure says no, with me." Marcus took a sip of his coffee and leaned back. He almost smiled. "Ms. Pruitt, with all due respect, our estranged situations here usually involve a 19-year-old with a fake ID or an ex-husband who's had about 6 too many margaritas at the rooftop lounge. We don't, as a rule, get a lot of parents trying to break down their daughter's door. And that's the advantage they're counting on," I said. "They will try to leverage your politeness. They will play the concerned parent card. They will lie. They will say I am expecting them, or that I am sick and not answering, or that they are so worried. I need to take that option off the table, completely." He stopped smiling, leaned forward, and placed his mug on the desk. "Okay, what do you need?" "First, my file," I said, effective immediately. "No one gets access to the 39th floor elevator, and no one is to be brought up to my unit without my direct, real-time verbal confirmation. They must call my cell. I must answer. No one is to be sent up because she's expecting us. I don't care if they arrive in tears. I don't care if they say it's an emergency. You call me. If I don't answer, they do not go up. Standard procedure if requested. Ms. Pruitt, done." He was typing. "Second, my own hardware." I had been on my laptop since 5 a.m. "I am having a new lock system installed this afternoon. The building's lock is good. Mine will be better. It's a biometric smart lock. It requires a 16-digit PIN and a fingerprint scan. It is linked to my phone. Any attempt to use a key, or a PIN, or force, and I get an immediate alert." "That's a serious lock," he said, nodding slowly. "Third, the camera. The building's hallway camera is too far away. I am having my own installed, right above my door, wide-angle lens, high definition, audio capable, and it saves all footage to a remote cloud server. It is also motion activated and will send a real-time alert to my phone and watch if anything bigger than a cat approaches my door." "You've thought this through," Marcus said. He sounded impressed. "I'm a senior sales specialist," I said. "I'm trained to anticipate and counter objections." He tapped his pen on his desk. "Good, because your list is about defense. You've got your perimeter, but you need an active response. Your family sounds determined. What happens when they just stand in the hallway and start screaming? Or try to get a locksmith?" He was right. I hadn't thought of that. "I can recommend a private firm," he said. "Ares Global Security. They're downtown. We have a few high-profile residents who use them. Athletes, politicians. You sign a contract. They integrate with your new smart lock and your camera. The second your alarm is tripped, either by a failed PIN code, or a force sensor, or a manual panic button from your app, it does not call a monitoring center in another state. It triggers a simultaneous Direct line call to my desk down here and to the Denver Police Department dispatch. No questions. No, is this a false alarm check? Just an immediate, priority one response. I took the card he offered me. Thank you, Marcus. Before I was even back in the elevator, I was on the phone with Ares Global. By noon, I had signed a 6-month contract. By 3 p.m., a quiet, professional technician in a gray jumpsuit had been to my apartment, installed the new lock, mounted the new camera, and integrated the entire system. My home was now a secure asset. But one piece of my childhood still gnawed at me. My mother's voice, screaming in the restaurant, my father's rational email. They believed, with every fiber of their being, that they were right. They believed their concern and their family status gave them a legal and moral high ground. The locks would stop them, but they would still feel like the victims. I needed to change the narrative. I needed to move this from a family drama, which they were experts at, to a legal matter, which I was. At 4 p.m., I did the boldest, most terrifying thing I have ever done. I walked into the Denver Police District 6 station on East Colfax. The air smelled of stale paper, bleach, and a faint, human sadness. It was a world away from the leather and quartz of my building. I sat on a hard plastic chair for 20 minutes before I was called to a desk. The woman who sat there, Officer Ramirez, looked like she had not slept in a week and had heard every possible excuse for human failure. "How can I help you?" she asked, her voice flat. "I need to file a formal trespass notice," I said. She sighed, a long, weary sound, and her eyes glazed over. "Ma'am, we do not get involved in family arguments. If you're having a fight with your boyfriend, you need to—" "This is not a family argument," I said, my voice as firm and cold as Marcus's had been with me. "I am a 34-year-old homeowner. I am being harassed by 3 individuals, Rob Pruitt, Denise Pruitt, and Kayla Pruitt, who are demanding access to my property. I have refused. They have, in writing, threatened to appear at my home tomorrow to force entry. I am here to create a formal, legal record that they are not permitted on my property." The word harassed and threatened got her attention. She looked up from her computer. "You're saying your parents are threatening you?" "I'm saying they have informed me they are coming to my property against my will. They believe their biological relationship to me gives them a legal right of entry. I need a document that officially informs them they are wrong." Ramirez's gaze sharpened. "Let me see the written threats." I handed over my phone. I had screenshot every text, every email. The "we will be there, you will be there." The "we are coming tomorrow, whether you open the door or not." The "we are going to resolve this as a family." She read them. Her expression did not change, but she scrolled for a very long time. She read my father's logical email about how my success belonged to the family. She read my mother's texts. She read Kayla's manipulative, passive-aggressive replies. Finally, she put the phone down and looked at me. "Ma'am, your family? They really think they have a claim on your apartment?" "They think they have a claim on my life," I said. She nodded once, a quick, sharp motion. "Okay." She turned to her computer and her fingers flew across the keyboard. "A trespass notice, or a no trespass warning, is a formal declaration. It is not a restraining order. It does not mean they are arrested on site. But what it does mean is that they are being officially informed by the Denver police that they are forbidden from your property if they are served with this notice and they still show up tomorrow. They are no longer family having a dispute. They are committing criminal trespass. It gives us probable cause. It changes the entire game." "How is it served?" "A party to the complaint can't serve it. We can dispatch an officer to their home address to deliver it." My stomach churned. A police car, at their house. That will cause a significant reaction. "That's the point, ma'am," Ramirez said, not unkindly. "You're drawing a legal line. This document is the line. They choose to cross it. It's on them. What's the address?" I gave it to her. I walked out of the police station into the cold afternoon air. My hands were shaking. I had just, in effect, called the police on my own parents. The good daughter in me, the one who had been trained for 34 years to absorb the blows, was screaming, horrified. But the part of me that had signed a $500,000 mortgage, the part of me that had built a life, the part of me that wanted to breathe, that part knew I had just saved myself. I had taken the family element out of the equation. Tomorrow, if they showed up, they would be criminals, not parents. The choice was now entirely theirs. That night, my apartment was a command center. I did not sleep. At 8 p.m., 9 p.m., and 10 p.m., I ran a full systems test. First, the alarm. I armed it from my phone. I waited 60 seconds. I opened my own front door. The sound was not a beep. It was an industrial, piercing shriek that physically hurt my ears. It filled the apartment, the hallway. My watch and phone exploded with simultaneous alerts. ARES Global Alert. Unauthorized entry, 39B. 5 seconds later, my phone rang. It was the Ares automated dispatch. Ms. Pruitt, this is Ares. A panic alarm has been triggered at your residence. Police have been dispatched. I shouted my verbal password. Northline 405. The alarm stopped. Next, the camera. I stood in the hallway, on my app. I watched myself in perfect, crystal-clear high definition. I could see the stitching on my shirt. I could hear my own breathing, captured by the high-sensitivity microphone. Everything was set. The locks were armed. The camera was recording. The private security was on high alert. The Denver police had, by now, served the trespass notice. The legal trap was laid. All that was left was the arrival. But I had one final move. I had a real presentation scheduled for tomorrow morning, a genuine, important one, with the cardiology department at a major hospital in Aurora, on the complete opposite side of the metro area. I had planned to take it by Zoom, from my home office. I looked at my phone, 10:30 p.m. There was no way I could be here. I could not be in this apartment, listening to them pound on the door, listening to my mother's inevitable, theatrical sobs, listening to my father's booming, self-righteous demands. I had built the entire system so that I would not have to be the one to say no. The system would say no. I went into my bedroom and pulled out my small carry-on suitcase. I packed my suit for the presentation, my laptop, my chargers, and a change of clothes. At 10:45 p.m., I walked out of my apartment, my suitcase rolling quietly behind me. I took the elevator to the garage. I did not drive to Aurora. I drove 5 miles west, to an anonymous, perfectly respectable Marriott courtyard on the highway, a place with 1,000 rooms and no memory. I checked in at 11 p.m. Pruitt, Kylie, checking in, corporate account. I got to my room. It was beige and brown and smelled faintly of carpet cleaner. It was perfect. I double-locked the door, put the security latch on, and sat on the edge of the stiff, king-sized bed. I opened my phone one last time. I looked at the app for my apartment. My beautiful, silent, empty fortress, 39 floors up. I tapped the button. Arm system, away. I set my alarm for 6 a.m. The good daughter was gone. She was on a business trip. Tomorrow, my mother, my father, and my sister would not be dealing with Kylie. They would be dealing with Ares Global Security, the Denver Police Department, and a 2-inch thick solid core door with a biometric lock. The conference room at the Aurora Hospital smelled of stale coffee and faint antiseptic. It was a windowless, beige box designed for the serious business of medical presentations. I stood at the front, next to a large digital screen. My audience, 6 cardiologists from the hospital's senior team, sat around a U-shaped table, sipping coffee from paper cups and looking at me with polite, academic skepticism. I was in my armor, a dark charcoal gray suit, a simple silk shell, and the low, comfortable heels I wore for long days on my feet. My hair was pulled back into a severe, unmessable bun. "Good morning, doctors," I said. my voice calm, measured, and authoritative. I clicked the remote in my hand, and the first slide of my presentation lit up the screen. I am Kylie Pruitt, with Northline BioCare, and I am here today to present the Phase 3 clinical data for our new compound, Althenia, as you know, for patients in the post-myocardial infarction cohort. The risk of readmission due to systolic dysfunction remains a primary challenge. I was good at this. I was excellent at this. I could take complex pharmacological data and make it compelling. I could speak the language of physicians, of bottom-line administrators, and of desperate patients. My voice was a tool, one I had honed to perfection. It was the voice of a person who had never, not once, had a messy, emotional, public restaurant explosion. I was in the middle of a key data point. And the efficacy data from the Cleveland Clinic trial shows a remarkable consistency. We are looking at a reduction in hospital readmissions by nearly 22%, which is a significant outlier compared to the current standard of care. As I said the word care, my Apple Watch, which I wore on my left wrist, gave a single, silent, haptic buzz. My voice did not stop. My gaze did not flicker from the doctors. I just, in a casual, slight motion, as if checking the time, angled my wrist. The screen lit up, a notification from the Aries app. 10:02 a.m. Motion detected at your front door. Skyline Crest. A tiny, cold spike of adrenaline shot directly into my bloodstream, but my voice, my beautiful, trained, perfect voice, continued. This, we believe, is a direct result of the drug's unique mechanism of action, which targets the... They were here. They were on time. My mind split into two. One part, the professional, focused on the presentation. The other part, the survivor, was now standing on the 39th floor of my building, my ear pressed to the digital door. In the sterile, carpeted silence of that hallway, I knew what was happening. My mother, Denise, was stepping forward first. She would be the one to press the doorbell, a polite, normal ding-dong, then a pause, then she would press it again, harder, ding-dong, then she would get angry, and it would be a rapid, pecking, furious ding-ding-ding-ding-ding. My father, Rob, would be checking his watch, his face set in a mask of patriarchal impatience. This was taking too long. Kylie was, as usual, being difficult. And Kayla would be leaning against the opposite wall, in her cashmere sweater and designer leggings, sighing, scrolling through her Instagram feed, utterly, profoundly bored by the entire process, just waiting for the door to be opened so she could go in and claim her new studio. Dr. Chen, I said, pointing the remote at the slide. To your earlier question about the side effect profile. Buzz. A second alert, I did not even have to look at my wrist. I felt the vibration. My heart gave a hard, painful kick against my ribs. I had to consciously keep my breathing even. I was explaining the data on a complex chart, my voice a perfect, flat line, which was the primary concern in Phase 2. But as you can see, in the 3,000 patient cohort, we saw gastrointestinal discomfort in less than 2% of subjects. My wrist angled again. 10:03 a.m. Unsuccessful entry attempt. Wrong key pin. Unsuccessful. They were not just ringing the bell. They were actively trying to breach the perimeter. My brain flashed to the new smart lock, the gleaming brushed nickel plate, the fingerprint scanner, the pin pad, and the old original keyhole, just below it. And I knew, with a sudden sickening clarity, what wrong key meant. My mother was digging in her purse. She was pushing aside old receipts, tubes of lipstick, and a wallet overflowing with loyalty cards. And then, her fingers would close around it, a single, brass key. Where had she gotten it? I remembered years ago, when I'd lived in my old rental, the one-bedroom in Capitol Hill, I had given her a spare. Just in case of emergencies. Had I ever gotten it back? Or had she, at some point, during one of her visits, taken it to a hardware store and made a copy? The premeditation of it, the fact that she had kept a key to my life, waiting for the moment she needed it, was a cold, hard stone in my stomach. I could see her. I could see her inserting that old, useless key into the keyhole of my new, high-tech lock. Buzz. A new alert. A third one, immediately following the last. 10:03 a.m. Unauthorized physical key attempt detected. On the camera, which I knew was recording every sound, you would hear it now. My mother, turning the key. It would scrape against the new, hardened steel mechanism. It would not turn. The smart lock would flash a bright red LED, a visual no, and it would emit a series of loud, electronic beeps. Error, error, error. My mother would be confused. She would be angry. The key always worked. And now, my father would step in. Here, Denise, give it to me. You are not doing it right. His voice, tight with frustration. He would snatch the key from her. He was a man of brute force. He believed all problems could be solved with a firm grip and a little shoulder. He would jam the key back in. He would try to force it. He would grab the heavy, solid core handle of the door and start to jiggle it, then yank it, hard, up and down. Clack, clack, clank. The sound of metal hitting metal, of the handle being violently shaken in its socket. The doctors in the room were looking at me. I had paused, just for a second. My throat was dry. I took a slow, deliberate sip from the glass of water on the lectern. And then, my watch gave a long, shuddering vibration. Not a short buzz, a continuous, emergency pulse. My blood ran cold. I looked down. 10:04 a.m. Alarm triggered. Force sensor. Ares Global notified. DPD dispatch notified. Monitoring activated. He had done it. My father. His pulling, his yanking, his physical, angry assault on the door had set off the internal force and vibration sensor. The system was now fully active. The alarm I had tested last night, the screaming, industrial shriek, was not going off yet. That was for a full breach. This was a silent alarm, the kind that protects assets, not just people. Right now, at this very second, a signal was being sent. At the Ares Global Security Headquarters downtown, a red light was flashing on a screen. An operator was looking at my file. And down in my lobby, 39 floors below the assault, the phone on Marcus's desk was ringing. A direct line from Ares. And as per my 6-month contract, a direct Priority 1 call was being routed to the Denver Police Department's dispatch center. It was done. The mechanism I had set in motion was turning, all by itself. I looked up from my watch. The room was silent. The cardiologists were waiting for me to continue. I apologize, I said, my voice smoother than silk. I just received an urgent message, a home office matter. One of the doctors, the oldest one, Dr. Allen, chuckled. Trouble with the Wi-Fi? Something like that, I said, smiling back. Now, as I was saying, I clicked the remote. The next slide appeared. The patient selection criteria for Althenia are critical. We are not targeting a broad spectrum. I was a machine. I was talking about ejection fractions and post-MI protocols. My words were precise. My tone was academic. And simultaneously, I was watching the drama unfold through the alerts. The alarm had been triggered. Security was notified. On the 39th floor, I knew they would be reeling. They would not have heard an alarm. They would just know the door was impossibly defeating them. My father would be red-faced, breathing heavily from his physical exertion. And my mother, I knew my mother. She was not a quitter. She was a problem solver. As long as the solution involved bending the world to her will. She would be pulling out her phone. She was done with keys. She was done with her husband's failed attempts. It was time to call in a professional. My phone, in my jacket pocket, buzzed with a new notification. It was not from Ares. It was from the camera. The audio detection algorithm had picked up a new, loud, clear conversation. The app sent me a snippet of the audio transcript. I kept talking. We are focused exclusively on patients with a post-MI ejection fraction below 30%. This is the cohort where we see the most significant. I finished my sentence. I glanced down at my phone, which I had placed on the lectern, pretending to check my notes. I read the transcript. It was my mother's voice, captured perfectly by the high-sensitivity microphone I had paid extra for. Earl? Yes. Is this Earl's locksmith? Yes. Earl. It is Denise Pruitt. I am in a real bind, and I need you. Yes, now. I am at my daughter's apartment, Skyline Crest Residences, on Arapahoe, floor 39. We are locked out, and the key just is not working. It must be jammed. A pause. I do not know. It is just stuck. Can you just get up here and open it? Yes, I am authorized. I am her mother. It is an emergency. Just treat it like it is our own. The question and answer session with the cardiologists lasted another 20 minutes. I answered questions about renal impacts, contraindications for beta blocker patients, and inevitably, cost and insurance coverage. My voice was a flawless instrument. I was poised, knowledgeable, and empathetic. I was, by every measure, the perfect corporate representative. At 11:30 a.m., I shook their hands. Thank you for your time, doctors. I'll have my assistant follow up with the full data pack and the reimbursement protocol documents. I gathered my laptop and my notes, packed my briefcase, and walked out of the windowless room with polite, professional smiles. I did not go to my car. I did not go to the lobby. I walked down the sterile white hospital corridor until I found what I was looking for: an empty surgical waiting area, a small, sad room with beige chairs and old magazines, smelling of floor wax. It was, mercifully, empty. I sat in a corner chair, the one facing the wall, away from the door. I put my briefcase on the floor. My hands were perfectly steady as I pulled out my phone. I opened the Aries app. My notification screen was a log of the entire battle. Motion detected, unsuccessful entry, unauthorized key, force sensor alarm, audio detected. But I did not want the log. I wanted the recording. I tapped the Event History tab. There, at the top, was a new file. 39B front door, 10:02 a.m. Duration, 28 minutes. I plugged in my professional noise-canceling earbuds, the ones I used for conference calls in airports. I pressed play. The video was crystal clear. It was the high-definition, wide-angle view from my new camera. My front door was on the left, a solid wall of gray. The hallway, with its neutral art and expensive carpet, was the stage. The first figures to walk into frame were them: my father, my mother, my sister, exactly on time. I watched my mother ring the bell, then pound it. I watched my father check his watch. I watched Kayla lean against the wall and pull out her phone, visibly annoyed at the delay. I watched my mother dig out the key, watched her jam it in the lock, watched the red light flash. I watched my father, that man of brute, impatient force, grab the key, jam it in again, and then begin to yank on the handle. I watched the door frame shake. The thud and clank were perfectly clear through my earbuds. I saw the exact moment the force sensor triggered the silent alarm. Nothing happened on screen, but I knew. I watched my mother, enraged, step back. She was shouting at my father. "You broke it, Rob. You probably broke the key." Then, I watched her pull out her phone. I listened, my stomach hollow, to the exact words I had read in the transcript. "Yes, Earl. I am at my daughter's apartment, Skyline Crest, floor 39. We are locked out. Yes, I am authorized. I am her mother. Just treat it like it is our own." I fast-forwarded through the next 6 minutes, until a new man appeared from the elevator. He was wearing a tool belt and a shirt that said, "Earl's Locksmith." He looked at the door. He looked at my lock. He looked at the pin pad and the fingerprint scanner. "Whoa," Earl said. His voice was wary. "Ma'am, this is not a normal lock. This is a high-security integrated smart lock. This is serious hardware." "Just open it," my mother snapped. "We are late. We have things to do." Earl shook his head, running a hand through his hair. I can't. Not like this. This is an integrated building system. If I try to drill this, it will trigger a full security lockdown, and I will be liable. I need an email from the owner of the unit and a form from the building management, or I cannot touch this. Period. My mother's face, a mask of suburban sweetness just moments before, turned ugly. I am telling you, I am her mother. I am the owner. I am giving you permission. Earl, to his credit, just shook his head again. He was nervous. He was looking right at the man yanking on the door, and the woman screaming at him, and then his eyes lifted. He saw the building's security camera, the little black dome in the ceiling 20 feet down the hall, and then his eyes traveled, and he saw my camera, the small dark lens pointed directly at his face. "No, ma'am," he said, his voice suddenly firm. He was already backing away, toward the elevator. "I am sorry. I cannot risk my license for this. You need to call the building. I am out of here." "You? You coward!" my mother shrieked at his back as the elevator doors opened. "I will have your job for this." He disappeared. My mother was left fuming, her hands balled into fists. My father kicked the bottom of my door, a dull thud. And then, a new character entered the scene. Marcus, building security. He walked into the frame from the same elevator, in his crisp, professional uniform, a radio on his shoulder. "Folks," he said, his voice calm, polite, but with an edge of steel. "Is there a problem here?" My mother's transformation was instantaneous. It was breathtaking. The rage vanished. Her face crumpled into a mask of maternal concern. Her voice went up an octave, full of a sweet, helpless quiver. "Oh, thank goodness," she breathed, putting a hand to her chest. "Yes. Hello. We are the Pruitts. This is our daughter's apartment. Kylie Pruitt? Unit 39B? We have been trying to get in. We are so worried about her. We think her lock is broken. We have a key. But it just will not work." Marcus did not smile. He looked at my parents. He looked at Kayla, who was still trying to be invisible against the wall. He had a tablet in his hand. "The Pruitts," he said, looking down at his screen. "Denise, Rob, and Kayla." "That is us," my mother said, beaming, as if he had just read her name at a graduation. "We are just here to help." Marcus looked up from the tablet, his face impassive. "Ms. Kylie Pruitt has left very specific, standing instructions. No one is to be allowed access to her unit, or even up to this floor, without her direct, real-time, verbal confirmation, which she has not given." My father stepped forward. "Now, you listen here, son. I do not know who you are, but this is a private family matter." "Additionally," Marcus continued, his voice cutting cleanly through my father's, "we were also notified by the Denver Police Department yesterday evening of a formal, legal, no trespass warning that was served at your address, which specifically names all three of you." The silence, my God, the silence in that hallway. My mother's concerned mom face just froze. It was a rictus. My father's self-righteous anger dissolved into visible, slack-jawed shock. They had not seen this coming. This was not part of the plan. "Police?" my mother whispered. She called the police? On her own family?" "This is not just a family matter, sir," Marcus said, his voice hardening, his patience clearly gone. "This is a matter of a resident's property and safety. The alarm in this unit was triggered by a force sensor 10 minutes ago, which is an automatic alert to my office and the police. You have been legally warned, and you are here. I am ordering you to leave the premises, now." He gestured to the elevator. My mother looked at Marcus, she looked at my father, and then she looked at my door, the door that had defied her, and she snapped. The mask of the sweet mother, the concerned parent, the rational planner, it did not just slip. She tore it off and threw it on the ground. "No!" she shrieked, a raw, guttural sound that made me physically flinch in my hospital chair. "I am not going anywhere. This is my daughter's house. We are her family. We have a right." And then she did it. She lunged at my door and began hammering on it with both fists, a desperate, furious, tantrum-like pounding. "Kylie!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "Kylie Pruitt, you open this door. You open this door right now and you talk to your mother. You will not do this. You will not." And that was when it happened. In the video. To the left, the door to Unit 39A opened a crack. A man I recognized as the surgeon from the gym peered out, his face a mask of annoyance. To the right, the door to 39C opened. The woman who was a partner at the law firm. She was in a bathrobe, and she was not impressed. My mother, a spectacle, screaming in the hallway of one of the most expensive buildings in Denver. Marcus unclipped the radio from his shoulder. His voice was calm, but loud enough for them to hear. "Dispatch, this is Skyline. I have an active trespassing situation on the 39th floor. The subject's from DPD warning number 22794. They are on site, refusing to leave, and creating a major disturbance. I need police response immediately." My mother was still screaming. My father was trying to pull her away, his face purple. "Denise, stop it! You are making a scene." "I do not care," she sobbed, still flailing. I watched the video, my heart a cold, hard stone. It took 4 minutes. 4 minutes of my mother screaming and my neighbors watching, before the elevator dinged. The doors slid open. My camera, in perfect high definition, recorded the 2 officers stepping out. One was a tall, young, broad-shouldered man, Officer Coleman. The other was a woman, calm, sharp-eyed, her hand already resting on her belt. Officer Ramirez, the woman I had spoken to. "What is going on here?" Ramirez asked, her voice instantly taking control of the hallway. Marcus stepped forward. "Officer, thank you for the quick response. Marcus, building security. These are the individuals from the trespass notice I called about." My mother, seeing a new audience, immediately went into her next role, the victim. "Officer, thank goodness," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "This is a terrible misunderstanding. This is my daughter's apartment. We are just worried about her. Her lock is broken, and this man," pointing at Marcus, "is harassing us." Officer Ramirez did not even look at her. She was looking at Marcus, who was handing her a copy of the paperwork. "Kylie Pruitt," Ramirez said, reading the paper. "She is the owner. She is not present, and she filed this no trespass warning yesterday at 4:15 p.m. Naming all 3 of you. I had an officer serve this to your home last night. Were you not aware of it?" "It is just a piece of paper," my father bellowed, stepping forward. "That is our daughter. This is a family dispute. You have no right to be here." Ramirez looked at him, her eyes as cold and hard as steel. "Sir, I am going to ask you one time to lower your voice. This is a private building, and you have been legally ordered to leave. This is no longer a family dispute. It is trespassing." "I have a right to be here," my mother insisted, her voice shrill. "I am her mother." "Ma'am," Officer Ramirez said, her patience clearly gone. She took a step toward my mother. "Your rights as a parent do not give you the right to access the private, adult property of your child, especially after she has explicitly and legally refused you entry. You are in violation of the law. You are going to leave this hallway, right now." "No," my mother screamed. "I will not." "Fine," Ramirez said. "You are under arrest for trespassing." And as Ramirez reached for my mother's arm, my father, Rob Pruitt, the patriarch, the protector, the man who fixed things, did exactly what I knew he would do. He acted. He lunged forward and grabbed Officer Ramirez's arm, not a gentle touch, a hard, restraining, "You will not touch my wife" grab. On my screen, in my earbuds, the entire world changed in a tenth of a second. "Sir!" Officer Coleman roared, his voice exploding as he grabbed my father from behind in a control hold. "Step back! Get your hands off my partner! Final warning!" "I am just protecting my wife," my father yelled, struggling against the much larger officer. "She is under arrest," Ramirez shouted, pulling her arm free, her hand immediately going to her handcuffs. "You are interfering. You are both under arrest." It was the most beautiful, terrible thing I had ever seen. My camera recorded it all. The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting closed on my mother's wrists, her unbelievable, shocked wail. "You cannot do this! Rob, do something!" My father, his face pressed against the wall, his arms being forced behind his back by Coleman. And Officer Ramirez, her voice clear, cold, and echoing in the now silent hallway, reading my mother her rights. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney." The camera view was perfect. My two neighbors, the doctor and the lawyer, standing in their doorways, watching, in their bathrobes, as my mother and my father were cuffed. And Kayla? The video captured her perfectly. She had not moved. She was still plastered against the far wall, as if she could melt into the expensive wallpaper. Her phone was in her hand, but her hand was shaking so violently, with such deep, profound, rattling terror, that she could not possibly have used it. She was just frozen, a statue of pure, pathetic helplessness. Her entire world, her entire system of support, being physically marched into an elevator in handcuffs. The elevator doors closed. The hallway was empty. The video file ended. I sat in the surgical waiting room, in the total, complete silence of my noise-canceling earbuds. My face was wet. I had not even realized I was crying. I did not drive back to the Marriott. I drove to the hospital parking garage, found a spot on the top level, exposed to the cold blue sky, and I turned the engine off. I sat in the silence of my car for a long time. Then, I pulled out my phone, went to the Aries app, and pressed play. I watched the entire 28-minute video file. My hands were shaking, my eyes were burning, but I was not crying, not anymore. The tears I shed in that hospital waiting room had been for the me who had to do this, the person sitting in the car, watching my mother scream and my father lunge at a police officer, was someone else. It was a horrible, ugly, brutal thing to watch. My mother's shriek, my father's red-faced rage, the sickening sound of the handcuffs ratcheting closed. It was not triumph. It was not joy. It was the sickening, necessary snap of a bone being reset. It was the hot, searing pain of a necessary amputation. And underneath it all, a vast, cool, quiet sense of relief. The relief of the fever breaking, the boundary I had tried to draw with polite words. They had forced me to draw with steel bolts and police officers, but the line was drawn. It was finally, undeniably, drawn. My phone, sitting on the passenger seat, suddenly buzzed. Not a text, a call. The name on the screen was Kayla. My heart seized. I had not spoken to her. Not really, since the restaurant. I stared at the screen as it lit up. Ring, ring. I let it go to the 5th ring. Then, on a cold impulse, I picked it up. "Hello?" My voice was a dry croak. "Kylie?" Her voice, it was not her bored, influencer drawl. It was not her bratty, put-upon whine. It was a voice I had never heard in my entire life. It was small, thin, and utterly, profoundly terrified. She was sobbing, a hiccuping, gasping, animal sound. "Kayla, where are you?" I am at the police station, downtown, the big one, the one on Colfax, Kylie." She took a gasping, wet breath. "They are still here. Mom and Dad. They've been charged." I said nothing. I just waited. "They charged them," she choked out. "Trespassing, criminal trespass, and interfering with a police officer. That's for Dad. Because he grabbed her arm, the policewoman, Kylie, the lawyer, the public defender they let us talk to for 5 minutes. He said it is really, really bad." "Okay," I said. My voice was just a flat, neutral tone. "He said because of the paper. The trespass notice you signed. He said that makes it premeditated. That is the word he used. He said because of that, it is not a he said, she said family argument. He said it is criminal trespass, and Dad is in more trouble for the interfering part. Kylie, what did you do? The accusation was still there, a tiny, reflexive barb, even in her panic. I took a slow, deliberate breath. I looked out my windshield at the Denver skyline in the distance. What I did, Kayla, I said, my voice cold and clear, was buy an apartment. What I did was say no when I was told to give it away. What they did, they chose to ignore a legal warning served by a police officer. They chose to show up. They chose to try to break in my door with a key. They chose to hire a locksmith, and Dad chose to put his hands on a cop. I did not do anything. Kayla, I just stopped them from doing things to me. There was a long, ragged silence on the other end of the line. Just her, breathing. I never thought, she whispered, and her voice cracked. I never thought it would go like this. What did you think would happen, Kayla? I asked. Honestly, what was your plan? I do not know, she shrieked, the panic bubbling over into frustration. I do not know. I just went along, because that is what we do. Mom and Dad said we are going to Kylie's, and Kylie will take care of it, and Kylie will give you the room. It is just what they always said. You always just took the hit. She had used the exact same words from the restaurant, but this time they were not a weapon. They were a confession. I just thought you would yell, she whispered, her voice collapsing back into sobs. I thought you would yell, and we would yell, and you would cry. And then you would just get tired, and you would let us in. You always just let us in. It was the most honest, pathetic, and damning thing she had ever said in her life. It was the first time she had ever, even accidentally, admitted to her own role in the system. Not this time, Kayla, I said. My voice was quiet, but it was absolute. Today is the day that everyone in this family learns that my no is a real word. It is not just a suggestion. It is not the beginning of a negotiation. It is the end of one. Kylie, she begged, the terror returning. You have to call them. Call the police. You are the victim. You can drop the charges, right? You can tell them to let them go. It is too late for that, Kayla. I am not the one who arrested them. Their own choices did. You need to find a lawyer, a real one. This is not my problem to fix. I hung up the phone. That evening, I drove back to Skyline Crest. I used my key, my PIN, and my fingerprint. The door opened with a smooth, satisfying click. I walked into the silence of my apartment. It was not lonely. It was earned. I went to my home office. I took the high-definition feed from the hallway camera and I pushed it to my main 40-inch monitor. I watched it again, not as a victim, but as an analyst. I watched my mother's face contort from concerned mom to enraged harpy. I watched my father lunge, his entire body a knot of entitled rage. I watched Kayla, frozen against the wall, a perfect, useless statue of helplessness. It was a case study in cause and effect, a lifetime of refusing to accept consequences, all colliding with a 2-inch steel bolt and a police officer who did not care about family dynamics. My phone, which I had unmuted, began to explode. The news had traveled. Aunts, uncles, cousins, people I had not heard from in years. From Aunt Jenna. Kylie, I just heard the most horrible story from a weeping Kayla. I am physically appalled. How could you? Your own parents? After all they did for you? From Uncle Mark. This is a family disgrace. You call off the police right now. This is a private matter, and you have made us a laughingstock. From my cousin, Sarah. Kylie, WTF? I know Aunt Denise is a lot, but cops? You need to hear their side of the story, too. Hear their side. My thumb hovered over the block button, but I was done being silent. I was done being the family's secret keeper, The one who absorbed the poison and pretended everything was fine. I went to the video file. I edited a perfect, 1-minute clip. It started with my mother screaming, "I am her mother. I am authorized," at the locksmith. It included my father kicking the door. It included my mother hammering on the door with her fists, screaming my name. And it ended, in perfect, clear high definition, with my father grabbing Officer Ramirez's arm and Officer Coleman slamming him against the wall. I went to the family group text. I went to Aunt Jenna's text, Uncle Mark's, Cousin Sarah's. I attached the video file, and I wrote one single sentence. "Anyone who wants to judge, please watch this first. This is not a dispute. This was an assault. Let me know if you have any more questions about their side." The replies stopped, instantly. I sat in my dark apartment, the city lights below me. I felt empty, not sad, not angry, just empty. I realized that for my entire life, I had been holding on to a tiny, stupid particle of hope. The hope that one day, they would see me. That one day, my father would be proud without an agenda. That one day, my mother would love me, not for what I could do for Kayla. The arrests had not been an act of cruelty. They had been the death of that hope. I was not mourning my family. I was mourning the illusion of the family I had always wanted. What was left, now that the illusion was gone, was just me, alone, in my apartment, and for the first time, that was okay. At 2 a.m., my phone rang. A blocked, unknown number. I knew, with absolute certainty, who it was. I answered. "Kylie!" The voice was a shriek, a raw, ragged, desperate sound. It was my mother, from a payphone in the county jail. "Kylie, you have to help me. They are treating me like a criminal. This is all a mistake. You have to tell them." She was sobbing, the theatrical tears replaced by real, ugly, terrified sobs. "You have to tell them it was a misunderstanding. Kylie, tell them you were confused. Tell them you did not mean to sign that paper. Tell them you want us to come home. You can fix this. You are the only one who can fix this." I listened. I heard the desperation. I heard the fear. And I heard, underneath it all, the same, unbreakable, narcissistic command. "You fix this. You take the hit." "You have ruined us!" she suddenly shrieked, her voice shifting instantly to anger. "You have destroyed this family. Your father. They are saying, his heart. This is your fault. You did this." I held the phone away from my ear, the plastic cool against my cheek. I looked out the window at the lights of Denver. I brought the phone back. I waited for her to take a breath. "I am not going to fix this, Mom," I said. My voice was as calm and quiet as the city sky. "What? What did you say?" she whispered. "I did not destroy anything. I just stopped letting myself be used. The rest of it, all of this was your choice, your choices, Dad's choices. This is the consequence. Goodbye." I hung up the phone. I turned it off. The legal system, once engaged, is a machine. It does not care about feelings. It cares about evidence, and I had provided a mountain of it. The charges stuck: criminal trespass, interfering with an officer, resisting arrest. A court date was set. My family, now mortgaged to the hilt to pay for lawyers, scrambled. I received certified letters, begging me, the victim, to make a statement asking for leniency. I did not. I did not ask for the maximum, either. I simply did nothing. I let the system I had engaged do its work. My heart hurt. Every day. It was a dull, constant ache, but it was better than the sharp, constant agony of the life I had lived before. The night before their first court appearance, I was standing at my window, the same one. The view of the Rockies was just a black silhouette against a field of stars. I thought about the word revenge. I had not wanted this. I had not wanted to see my parents in handcuffs. I had not wanted to destroy my family. Revenge. This was not revenge. This was just consequences. What I had done was not to destroy their lives. It was to force them for the first time, to actually live with the consequences of their own actions, actions they had always just called being a family. I turned off all the lights in the apartment. The room was black, but the glass wall was alive, reflecting the thousands of lights from the city below, making them look like they were floating in the room with me. I had bought this apartment for myself, but it was not until I watched them, cuffed, being led into that elevator, that I finally, truly, possessed it. It was not just possession of a property, it was possession of my life. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know your thoughts. So please comment and tell me where in the world you're listening from. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories. Give this video a like and show your support by hitting that hype button so more people can hear it.